Hi, this is Nyla.
This is Rohan.
We bring to you our first episode of Immoral Practicality. It's Immoral Practicality, Immoral Impracticality.
It's Immoral Practicality.
It's Immoral Practicality. I always thought you're the one who's going to be, messing this up, and here I am.
Well, you just took over the spotlight, didn't you? Start
it's
recording.
On me. There's an entire chandelier on me. What the fuck do you mean I took the spotlight? I am the spotlight. That's just no modesty in my bones. Well, for our first episode, we have picked the movie Her.
The 2013 Oscar-winning movie Her. What did it win an Oscar for?
Best writing.
What did it win an Oscar for? Sorry, carry on.
Best writing and original motherfucking screenplay, yo.
You're just gonna curse on the video?
It's a spoken motherfucking discourse.
You get demonetized when you curse too much.
Do I care? Should I care?
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay. I have autonomy,
We don't have a fan base.
I don't care. Friends, you better be watching. You know I put a gun to your head, right?
So
yeah,
what do we talk about?
So
How do we start?
We are talking about the let's talk about the credits about the movie.
So
a little
again, we're talking about the 2013 movie Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix
and
Scarlett Johansson. Okay.
And Chris Pratt was there.
Chris Pratt was in the movie.
But he wasn't hot in the movie, so that was a bit of a waste.
This is pre-hot Chris Pratt.
Pre-hot.
Pre-Guardians of the Galaxy.
Amy Adams was there.
Amy Adams was in the movie, looking
and
uglier than I've ever seen her.
Oh my, she had beautiful curly hair. She looked very normal.
She looked very unattractive, which is uncharacteristic of Amy Adams.
Yeah, that was the best part. Everyone was supposed to look very normal here.
They did look
like
very
a regular
normal.
life kind of a thing. And she portrayed, okay, not about Amy. We'll get to that. We'll get to the character. So let's give you a little bit of a synopsis of the movie.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Give us a synopsis of the movie.
So the movie is, what do I have to talk about the synopsis of the movie? So the movie
what is it about?
Is about this guy called Theodore Twombly.
Theodore Twombly. Thank you, Theodore.
Theodore Twombly.
Did I turn my phone off?
No, you didn't.
Rohan, give us a synopsis of the story.
The story is about Joaquin Phoenix's character, Theodore Twombly, who is a writer. He writes letters for people, which I think is hilarious. He works at a company called beautifulhandwrittenletters.com.
In the very exposition, they make the setting very clear. In fact,
they do.
The starting scene is where he's reading one of his letters, right? And this is how it goes. He says them.
It's almost like voice to text. Because he's narrating the letter as the software is writing it out.
That's when we know the influence of technology.
Absolutely,
absolutely.
Right? I also
the very beginning.
see another thing which isn't really technology related, but the fact that he works in a company which writes your letters for you shows the detachment in people because of technology.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Because he's writing like a letter from a husband to a wife, or from a father to a son, or something like that, and it just goes to that you could hire people to convey emotions for you.
We heard there were a lot of people in their cubicles doing the same thing.
Doing the same thing. So it's a company which does that for you.
There was a moment in the movie where Samantha asked him.
Who's Samantha?
Samantha is the OS.
So the movie is supposedly a love story between Theodore Twombly and his operating system. As in, like, you know how your cell phone has Siri in it? So Samantha is an advanced AI version of Siri. And she has a personality. She has a personality
which can grow and expand.
Right.
And she adapts. She has the ability to adapt.
Right.
Eventually feel a lot of human emotions.
So she not only like can grow in terms of intellect, but she eventually gains sentience.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, views herself as a person more so than an object, right?
I should mention the character who plays Samantha is Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson.
And we never once see her in the movie, and yet her voice, the delivery, the impact, she is the leading woman in this movie, right? And her voice.
I'd say she's, even though Theodore is like Theodore's who we relate to, right? He's the main character. But Samantha is sort of the emotional core of the film, I'd say. And it's amazing because you know, we see, so Scarlett Johansson plays a disembodied voice. Not a new concept. At least, like, people do voice acting all the time.
Yeah,
right? We do that in animated movies, right?
And
But
you mentioned how through animated movies, we see emotions, we still have reflection
because
of the voice
when you're
on
watching
the character,
Shrek, right? Mike Myers' voice, you see Shrek move and emote, right?
But over here, there's no face.
There's no face because Samantha looks like this. Samantha's a little black box.
Half of this.
Half of it, yeah. Advanced technology. But Samantha is a smartphone. And she is the operating system talking to him. So for Theodore or Joaquin to have a relationship with, he's literally in a romantic relationship with his phone.
Yeah.
And that's what the crux of the movie is about. It's about this relationship and what happens after.
So let's talk about the genre of the movie. To me, the genre, it does have a lot of themes. One of the dominant themes is definitely technology. This whole relationship is formed on the basis of the connection.
Would you say
is through?
Would that genre be science fiction?
Science fiction, yeah.
Okay.
It has science fiction elements, but to me, the genre, not the themes, the genre is definitely a love story. It's a love story between a man connecting with somebody based off of emotions, something really, based off of emotions. It's an emotional heart-to-heart connection. Actually, not even heart-to-heart. It's like
heart to motherboard.
Couldn't disagree
Carry on.
with that. So that kind of a connection, it's so human, and yet it's not in this case. So it's very paradoxical, and that kind of, okay, so because the genre to me is very clear, it's a love story to me and the rest of the population.
Most people would agree with you.
Rest of the population. Let me ask you, to you, what's the genre of the movie?
It's a horror movie. It's a movie about how technology can outgrow humanity and then take over. It's basically a precursor to the Terminator franchise.
What the fuck are you talking
starring
about?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Where does
Killer
your mind
robots,
go?
and Samantha is basically the precursor to Skynet, which is the AI in the Terminator franchise. And then Samantha's gonna make killer robots and wipe out humanity.
I did not see it that way.
That is what it is.
That is scary.
When technology gains sentience, they take over.
That reminds me of how Harlan Ellison portrayed. There's a short story called "I Have No Mouth, I Must Scream." A computer gains sentience. That reminds me of that. That has nothing to do with this. Where are you? Like, what? Elaborate. I want to know more.
Because
I don't agree, but I want to know more.
As I was watching the movie, I kept asking, well, at some point in the movie, it's interesting to point out how Samantha gets her name. Are you gonna eat in the middle of my show?
Yeah.
So at some point, when Joaquin starts talking to his AI.
Did you say middle of my show?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
When Joaquin starts talking to his OS for the first time, or operating software for the first time.
Okay, that part was serious to me.
Yeah. She names herself Samantha, or it names itself Samantha.
She names herself Samantha,
right?
Because she likes the sound of that.
Right, because she says she goes through a book of names, and then it's like a 1,200-page book, and she reads it within a fraction of a second, which is terrifying.
That was amazing.
If you have a computer which can learn at that rate, and think of all the messed up stuff we've put out into the world, you know. Literature or poems or otherwise, and humans are like, it doesn't take a genius software to figure out that humans are what's wrong with the world, right? And so I'd be like, I mean, to me, the robots take over.
Do you think that Joaquin, Theodore, as Samantha was asking him questions, right?
It's also about, I think an extreme dependence on technology. Because remember when
he was giving it all away.
He was giving it all away. One of the first questions the OS asks Joaquin is, "What's your relationship with your mother like?" I never tell you what my relationship with my mother is like.
It was very invasive, and there was no privacy concern. Like, Samantha walks into his life and starts going through his emails.
Immediately.
Interesting thing that we pick up about him. But still, like he gives consent
it
right
away.
away.
Yeah.
Interesting thing about him though, he's the type of person who holds on to his past.
Right.
Something about that we're going
We
to
should
talk
actually
about
talk
a
about
little
the
bit.
themes of the movie because you just brought it up. So I think one of the core tenets of the movie, especially prior to him starting the relationship with Samantha, which is I think 10 minutes into the movie, we realize he's a sad man.
Yeah. Awfully lonely.
Melancholy
Yeah.
is a very important theme.
Here's how we know. Reference to this scene, he's on the train and he's talking. What?
He talks to his phone. His phone has like a Siri-esque software.
Right.
Samantha
so
is an updated version of that.
Right. So he's like, play something melancholic. Right.
No, play melancholy song.
Right.
Play other melancholy song.
Right. Oh my god. Okay, carry on. So yeah, that was one of the themes.
So melancholy is one of the themes, and I think that's persistent throughout the film because we learn later on that Theodore is all mopey and sad because he's going through a divorce.
That's one of the plot subjects here.
I should have mentioned this earlier in the video, but this is the second time I'm watching the movie. I watched it for the first time like 5 years ago, and I kind of dismissed this movie as like, oh, it's a good movie, but it's a movie about this guy who's a socially inept loser who falls in love with his phone, right? It's some critique on humanity and our dependence on technology.
I love your take on romance.
Absolutely.
Crazy.
But what's interesting here upon like watching it a second time, I realized that Theodore is not nearly as socially inept as we think he is. Because I think he has two friends. Three.
He does.
Amy, his ex-girlfriend from college.
Yeah.
Her husband, Charles.
Right. And
Amy's played by Amy Adams.
And Chris Pratt, who is his boss
Chris Pratt, who's his boss.
Yeah, at the place where he writes letters.
Right.
So yeah.
His wife, who he doesn't really talk to. And then he goes out on a date.
He detached himself a little bit. He has friends who are inviting him over. He has these other friends who are setting him up on a date. Right. We go into the blind date thing.
Yeah.
So he does have social company, but he chooses.
And he's a fun person.
He's a fun person too.
Right.
I did not find him boring not once. He has a broad outlook on life, and he finds fun and love in simple things. He's just walking around the place, and it's like, you want to go on an adventure with me? He says to Samantha. So he's detached by choice.
You're right, and I think the divorce probably has something to do with that.
It did have a lot to do with that.
Right.
He was coming out of that.
It's interesting that you said that he says to Samantha, let's go on a trip, because Samantha doesn't just sound like I am a robot. Help! Like that's not her.
Yeah. They mocked that bit a little bit in the movie. He's like, read my emails.
Right. So Samantha actually,
because he's so used to talking to his phone, even he's transitioning into the fact that this OS is a human kind of a
because to him it's a person.
Right. And he's also adapting
to that. It's easy to forget that, and I think upon rewatching the movie, I understand a little bit more why he fell in love with her, because if you had Scarlett Johansson's disembodied voice in your phone, that's pretty hot.
I'll tell you something.
That's the horror aspect of the movie.
That was the romantic aspect of the movie for me. You see, agree to disagree, bitch.
Okay. Carry on.
Let me ask you this now. Just in brief, tell me what was your takeaway, if you had any. What kind of perspective of life or towards life or humans or emotions did it draw for you? How did you resonate or not?
The movie is very obviously about life and relationships.
Yeah.
But I think another important aspect of the movie is that it's about growth. And you see that primarily through Samantha, because Samantha is a new being, right? Samantha is born the minute he plugs her into the computer.
Right.
But through the course of the movie, like Samantha's growing exponentially. But it's also okay. So let's talk about Samantha's growth a little bit, because initially Theodore Twombly, our main character, is Samantha's world. Now, Samantha doesn't sleep or eat or drink. She's a software. So when Theodore sleeps or does mundane daily tasks, Samantha's this curious, disembodied thing, learning constantly. And that was one of the questions that I had halfway through the movie, where I was like, if she does consume knowledge at that rate, how do you contain that? And that's why the last
Would you want to though?
half hour of the movie. No, of course not. But like, I'll get back to that point. But that's what the last half hour of the movie addresses. We start to see Samantha grow beyond Theodore.
Right.
Like suddenly Theodore is not the only person she's interacting with, even though she's his phone. She starts to interact with other software, other people, and there's a point in the movie when she just shuts off.
Yeah, but don't give away the ending just yet.
Okay. But okay.
We'll get there.
I was on a roll and you just stopped. Okay.
Sorry.
So it's interesting because she grows exponentially, right? And what we eventually realize is Samantha's growth is supposed to thematically mirror the growth of Joaquin and his wife, played by Rooney Mara, who's his real life girlfriend. I don't know how that comes into anyway, but like she's great in the movie. So I think she outgrows him as well. And the movie is about Theodore growing as a person post-divorce because he's stuck in the past. We see these really. What I really like is we don't address why Theodore got divorced, at least directly.
Yeah.
But we do see the relationship pre-divorce and all the happy memories that he's got, the things that he's holding on to. And so it's not like in real life, you know? It's not like, oh, I farted on the couch that one night, my marriage is over. It's a combination of factors.
Do you really think that's why marriages dry out?
I've never been married, I don't know.
With this attitude, honey?
but that's what I'm saying, you know, like it's a combination of factors. It's not so much as what you do is who you are.
Yeah, there's no easy way to say why'd you split up.
Right.
And there's no straight answer.
Exactly.
And that's why the movie did not address that, you know.
And
you're right that they outgrew each other in various ways. So there's
she outgrows him. He's pathetic. Carry on.
Here I was telling people that I'm falling in love with Joaquin Theodore. And you call him pathetic.
Interestingly enough, the movie is set in the near future, not too distant for us to fathom. And everything's really sleek. Everything's
sleek.
Clean and pretty and sleek.
The colors are vibrant and beige and bland at the same time.
Right. But what's interesting to me is Theodore Twombly has a mustache. Just a mustache.
So does Chris Pratt.
At what point in the future? So does Chris Pratt. At what point in the future? Who's his boss? At what point in the future do you see the mustache making a comeback?
Oh my god!
Like a stylistic choice with just a mustache.
Also,
because it works for him.
It works.
He looks middle-aged and sad.
Yeah, but Chris Pratt just looked like a boy.
And you know, halfway through the movie, he gives up on the mustache. Did you realize that?
Wait, the mustache was gone halfway through?
Chris Pratt's mustache is gone. Yeah.
So during the double date, Chris Pratt did
he
not
doesn't have a mustache.
Oh my god, I did not notice. So as soon as he gets a lover, he takes a lover, his mustache is gone.
I guess.
You see, girls don't like just a mustache. Chris Pratt proved it. So let's do a little bit of a character analysis as we go through the plot.
Who do you want to start with?
Of the movie. I actually really want to talk about Samantha first. Let's talk about Joaquin first. Because he is the lead character here.
Right.
The whole story surrounds him.
For a sad boy, he's actually pretty socially inept. We see him, we've talked a little bit about him already, but at some point we see him go on a blind date. His friend set him up. And he goes, oh wait, Samantha sets him up.
No, Samantha supports it, and
okay, so it's his
so
friends.
His friends are like, "We're sorry, we took it upon ourselves, but we set you up with this amazing girl."
Right.
He sends
and this amazing
pictures.
girl is Olivia Wilde.
Yeah, Olivia frigging Wilde, and we see this when your favorite character comes into
Right.
So he's like, "Oh, she's a bomb, right?"
So this world with advanced AI and technology has very interactive video games. There's a little blob of an alien which shows up in one of the levels when Joaquin is playing his game. It just comes in and says, "Fuck you, fuck it, shithead." Which to me, it's so disarming because he looks like Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Yes.
And he comes and starts cursing at you, and he keeps doing that.
We thought he was just some kid, right?
Right. And then Samantha's in his ear, because he communicates with Samantha using an earpiece. And he's talking to Samantha, and then Samantha goes like, "We should curse back," and so he calls it something.
He says "fuck you" back.
Right. And then it it shows respect.
It shows
Acknowledges it and then leads them out of the level.
Yeah. So Samantha recognizes that this was the test.
Right.
You know. Okay. So that's when.
Also, the game can interact with the people. So and it because it hears Samantha. And it's like who's that?
Fat bitch.
This fat bitch.
And then calls him a pussy.
Oh.
I'm sorry. Not my words.
Right.
So yeah, interesting how he goes on. So Samantha's like, go for it.
Yeah.
So okay, by
the video
now,
games in this world are incredible because Joaquin's friend Amy, played by Amy Adams again.
Oh yeah, we see that later in the movie.
Right. Later in the movie, she's a game developer. And she's making a video game about being a mom, a stay-at-home mom, and so you do mundane things in the game. Yeah. So she's pouring her kids cereal. And then she turns away for a second, and one of the kids has the bowl on their head. The other one's drowning in their bowl of cereal. It's amazing.
And she's like, "You failed. This one, you failed
at being a mom."
And then she brings cookies. She breaks all the traffic rules. Gets their kids to the school on time, and
makes bakery goods.
Yeah, and she's the mom of the year.
Right.
So there was another scene where the mom is dry humping a refrigerator when the kids aren't around. So yes, video games are very interactive.
Very interactive video games.
And again, a force of technology.
Very mundane as well.
Yeah.
Video games.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. They're doing regular stuff.
Very regular.
Very bored people playing these games.
Again, brings up another theme of the movie: technology-induced boredom, which is, and you see that now. Like, we can't imagine our parents having an access to the plethora of things that we have, right? Apparently, there's like some 300 hours of content uploaded every second on YouTube, and we're bored. That's amazing to me.
And yet we're bored.
Yeah.
I've done some pretty
Watch
crazy.
our show. Don't get bored.
Listen. Okay. So you were telling me
Character analysis.
You were telling. Okay. So about Joaquin.
Right.
Give me your take on Joaquin. How did he make you feel? If you could resonate, what was it about him that you liked or disliked?
I'm glad I'm not that loser.
Let's just for 1 second not call him a pathetic loser, okay?
Joaquin,
we get he was lonely.
Joaquin's in pain. He's not ready to move on, and he's holding on to memories of his relationship, of his marriage, and he keeps saying the same thing about how him and his wife, they grew up together, and so he kind of feels like that's his world, right? And he's not ready to move on from that. He also refuses to sign the divorce papers. He keeps delaying.
That was like the conflict in the beginning. He refuses to sign.
Right, he's not ready to move on.
And he's not responding to the emails from the attorney, from Catherine herself. Catherine is the ex-wife.
Right.
And Samantha is being very supportive at the same time, urging him, you gotta let go. So like you said, she plays a huge part in his growth as well through the process of coming out of the divorce. So tell us a little bit about him. Did you in any way resonate with him? I really want to know.
Theodore? Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I think it's a horror movie. Okay. Because you look at this guy and in my head, from the previous watching of this film, I thought he was a loser. But then you look at him now and you're like, oh no, he's just a normal guy who's pretty relatable. He's pretty talented as well. His letters are incredible.
Incredible.
And so this guy, creative guy with social skills, he goes on a date with Olivia Wilde. He actually is able to convince her to get down and dirty.
And he is attractive. He's funny, and yeah, she kind of falls for him straight away. She says,
I need commitment up front.
And he's like, on the very first date, that was forward.
Nope.
That hurt. Remember that scene where she's like looking at him and her eyes, like, they're glowing. Her eyes are glowing and she's almost about to cry, and she's like, I want the commitment. You're not going to leave me or waste my time like the other guys, right?
Right.
But he was honest. He's like, I'm not ready to commit to anything.
There's something to be said about that, yeah.
Right? So you mentioned how he's still living in the past. He is still dominated by his past memories. He has not moved on. He's stuck there. There's that quote you were referring to that
Right,
Scarlett
right.
says to him.
Scarlett
What did
says
he
to
say?
him, I think one of the best lines of dialogue in this movie, the past is just a story we tell ourselves. And what do you think that means?
Okay. Because he lives in this repetitive pattern, right? He always lives in these flashbacks, and every time he is, even when he's like he's fantasizing repetitively about this one pregnant woman. Wait, can I hear your thoughts about that for a sec?
So in the beginning of the movie, he's just walking home. This is pre-Samantha. And he's not on his phone. He's got the earpiece. So the AI is reading him his emails and such. And then he goes through the news, and then he goes like, oh, some model or actress just posted nude pregnancy photos.
And he's like, he's in the subway.
He opens his phone. He just picks up his phone and just looks at it. Yeah.
He's swiping. He's intrigued. We know he has a fetish.
Which is amazing to me. Here's something I want to bring up.
Mm-hmm.
So we say that he has friends, but really, one of them is his boss. So he has to interact with his boss and be nice to them. His other friend, the only one we see in the movie, is his ex-girlfriend from college. Amy is actually his ex.
Yeah, they mentioned
college.
that.
And
briefly dated.
right, and so
At first, I thought Amy, though she was married to her guy, she connected to Theodore more than she connected to her own husband.
I thought that all the time.
Right?
It's true, yeah. Because I think her marriage falls apart in the movie.
Yeah, and I thought later at the end they would be the ones connecting, but they were connecting, not in a romantic way. They were still friends, and they were bonding over the fact that they both lost their OSs.
Which I like. Okay, so you spoiled the ending of the movie. Yeah.
It's okay.
So-
If you watch the movie, you already know.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
listen.
We should have
Listen
given
to
them like a spoiler warning in the beginning of the video.
Spoiler alert!
Yeah.
Spoiler
You
alert!
can't do a lit analysis without.
For sure. You have to watch the
Without
movie
spoiling.
beforehand, and because we are bringing out the issues. So, carrying that forward. So,
Also, it's a 7-year-old movie.
yeah, 2013. It's not new.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, he is. So he takes. Samantha has this need to feel human, and she's loving everything that she's feeling. So in the very beginning, he goes on a date with Olivia Wilde, and the whole time Samantha is watching the people. Take a sec, and she's like, "Close your eyes, go 300 degrees, turn around."
Yeah, that was after the date.
After the date?
Yeah.
Oh, that came after?
He doesn't take her. He feels oddly possessive of her. He doesn't take her out on the date.
Not on the date, right?
Yeah,
right.
no, he
It was before and after the date. Okay, so eventually now it's Samantha and him going on dates.
Right.
So there was this scene where he takes her on an adventure to the beach where there are so many people, and there was this scene, Rohan, where people and their flaws are beautifully captured. There was this old woman with wrinkled elbow. There was this person with not very well shaped, a little flabby, and just out on a beach. There are people being humans. So this is a world where no one's really perfect or supposed to be beautiful. So I love that part. The camera was catching that. Samantha was watching everyone be their human selves, out in the open on a beach, right? And then she's like, "Have you ever wondered?" So this is her curiosity. Remember we talked about how Samantha is very curious, trying to learn about people, how humans work, their minds, their idiosyncrasies, their appearances, right? And so she plays around a little bit with the appearance things. Okay, what if you wake up one day and
your butthole is in your armpit?
Armpit?
Well, first of all,
she draws a picture.
If your butthole was in your armpit, you wouldn't call it a butthole, would you?
Oh, well.
You would call it a pit hole.
And then she draws a picture of what anal sex would look like. That was so funny and so cute and childish, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
So this is another thing I want to tell you about.
I think it captures her innocence.
Her innocence, exactly.
Horror movie. Carry on.
Innocence and horror do not go, just so you know. But not interesting how you see it that way. I don't. Anyway, so she is very innocently looking at the world, and he's the one introducing her to this, right? To this world of people, emotions, and so on and so forth. He's the
Especially
one.
to physical experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
There was a scene in the movie which I think, you know, as we're going into that stuff, they have phone sex at some point in the movie.
yeah.
Of Samantha and his
This
phone.
is, by the way,
So when
you must mention this is right after the date goes wrong.
right after the date
Right
goes
after
wrong.
the
So
date goes wrong.
I watched that scene the first time 5 years ago, and I was like, this is ridiculous. But then this time around, again, horror movie. It is very, it's very, it's sweet because they turn the video off, right? So suddenly, because you've been seeing Joaquin all this time, you can't see Joaquin, and you've never seen Samantha. So it's just two people, and their voices, and you're kind of forced to feel, I guess, what Samantha feels or what Joaquin feels. You're put into that mindset, and I mean, like, it is a well-rendered scene, as patently ridiculous as it is.
Shut up. Let me tell you a little bit about the phone sex between Samantha and Theodore.
There's more to say.
She was starting to feel emotions, and for the first time, she felt the ability to want, once again, back to desire, right?
She was craving a physical body.
And he was a little drunk, and but he gave into that. Okay, and listen, just a little bit ago, he was with this beautiful woman in person, and yet he did not feel that for her. But over here, because of how the voice of Samantha is, you know, overpowering in his heart and his mind, he gives into that, right? And they end up having a beautiful, beautiful, intimate moment, and the screen goes black.
And there's what I really, the part to appreciate about that is there's nothing gratuitous about it.
Nothing.
At all.
Nothing.
Yeah.
I had my earphones on when I was watching that,
Right.
and I was feeling how beautiful it was. I was surprised they were interacting at that level, because it's the most intimate thing.
Right.
The most intimate thing. Anyway.
Also, like, I think right after this, he signed, because he's connecting to Samantha so well, and they're exploring the world. He goes and meets his wife, and during this entire time, I'm like, no one's calling this guy out for the crazy person that he is, and his wife does that.
His wife does that. Can I bring you back to the morning after a little bit?
Yeah.
We're going into the middle. Remember that point when how people respond to the OS and him falling in love idea. Okay, so a little bit back, Okay, so back to the morning after the phone sex between Samantha and Theodore. It gets a little awkward. So he's used to having her read his emails or like remind her his agendas of the day. And she's sitting there. She's like, okay, this really struck me. She's like, okay, so I want to tell you. So let's say they had a typical one-night stand. And that's how I saw it. And then he's like, by the way, I should tell you. Yeah.
I don't expect commitment.
Yeah, I'm not looking for any commitment. And she's like, okay, this is when I realized the girl is sassy AF. She's like, I thought I was going to tell you how I feel. Like, you know, here. And she was not expecting anything.
You don't expect commitment. I live in your phone.
Right? Jesus. And she's like, I want to explore the world. I want you to show me. And that's when things become not awkward anymore, and that's when the love is restored, because I was so afraid it was gonna be yet another shitty post one night stand, you know, kind of a detachment
I don't think
situation.
It wasn't a one night stand at all. It was them consummating the relationship.
I feel that happened
the morning
too,
after is not about, oh, let's have this awkward discussion about how we're never going to see each other again. It was about it was to portray the awkwardness that people have when they share that intimate a moment.
Exactly.
Right? In the throes of passion, and then they
wake up.
They're supposed to transition and act normal the next day. Right.
That's real life, by the way. You're not in that energy. Later on, by the way, when they're deep into the relationship, Samantha's like, we're not having as much sex anymore. Why is that? And he's like, that's normal. You know, that was the honeymoon stage. He actually says that That was the honeymoon stage, and this is actually normal. That,
And
you know, I'm going to sleep.
that honeymoon stage conversation comes right after the meeting with his wife.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I love, during the entire time, like I already said,
Let me pose a question to you. How does everyone respond to the OS situation?
His friends respond with enthusiasm, which is disturbing.
I thought that was really supportive.
Right.
That's what friends are for.
Weird. Friends don't act like that.
Would
Friends
you call me
you out
really
on this.
naive? Would you call me really naive for thinking that's the
Extremely.
case? Shut up.
But his wife is his ex-wife is the only. So what he does is he decides to meet his ex-wife one last time before he signs the divorce papers.
Finally.
Right. So and we get to see them interact. And initially it's sweet. He tells her how he's met somebody, and then he's like, "It's my phone," and she's like, "You're a crazy person who is incapable of handling real human emotions, and so you want the."
And congratulations, you found that.
Right. You want
Throwing shade.
like the feeling of being in a relationship without actually taking any of the responsibility that comes with it.
Oh, that was hurtful, Rohan. That
Yeah, and
hurt.
I think that's completely
Destroyed him.
completely accurate. You know, like she calls him out on like, you know, this macabre thing that he's pulling with his phone, and
The only person who had an appropriate reaction.
the only person who had an appropriate reaction to this is his wife, and it's
As romantic as it is.
it's disguised in scorn and hatred, or not hatred, but like this jealousy, perhaps this distastefulness.
a little bit of jealousy for sure.
Right.
Because she was like, you're dating or seeing someone already. She wasn't. That showed.
No, but like, I think she tried to take. She was upset by it, but she tried to take that with like some positivity. But when he's like, "No, I'm dating my phone," and because he hasn't been judged all this time.
Yeah.
Everyone's been like, "Oh, cool."
And now we're at the point where
We're in the last 30 minutes of the film.
and it was a plot twist. So personally, I watched the first hour and a half during the night, and then the last 30 minutes in the morning. And while I was watching the first hour and a half, I was in love. I was loving everything. I was, as an audience, growing with the relationship. I had no idea what transition it was going to take. I was not ready for the plot twist. Were you?
What's interesting was I also watched the last half hour because it was getting really late, so I had to pause. And I did the same thing. I watched it the next day.
Right.
And I went to sleep with questions like, oh, why? I mean, all my concerns about this AI growing really fast and, you know, becoming volatile and outgrowing humans. None of that's happening. It's a very optimistic movie. I don't like it. So, but then the last half hour, that's what happens, right? Like at some point, Theodore starts to call. They communicate through their phones because she's in the phone.
I hate to admit this, but you know, you had this skeptical approach to the movie, right?
Yes.
And you were right.
As I do to life.
You were right about this going south, and
Absolutely.
And spoiler alert,
Yeah,
it did.
because that's what I like. I was right about two things. One, I was like, okay, why is no one calling him out on it?
Yeah.
And one of the best scenes of the movie is his wife
Yeah.
giving him shit for it. And then, of course, it all going south. I was like, yeah, it must. And then it does.
And it does.
So, in the last half hour of the movie, Joaquin's trying to communicate with Samantha because he does that. She's always there, right? So he tries to contact her and she's not there. He goes to his office phone.
Right.
Sorry, his office laptop.
Scene.
Not there.
Not
He
there.
tries to run home because that's where he initially got the software.
Can I tell you a little bit what I was feeling in that moment? Okay, so she's not picking up, and here's how this is not a human being. You
Right.
can't just, because they're not available on their phone and you're worried, you can't just show up at their house. Are you dead or are you alive? He has no way of finding out if she's lost. This is what I was afraid of. Did the system crash? You know, and if it did, their love and their interaction just dissipated just like that. I was scared, okay?
Right.
But the worst happened. This feeling wasn't even the worst of it. Oh, system crashed. It took the acceptable. But how it ended, let's talk about that.
So he's running I'm guessing through the subway station or something. But he's on like a flight of stairs. And that's when Samantha picks up. So he
It's
sits
funny
down.
how he's going down the stairs, and at the same time, his life is taking a downfall.
It's a spiral.
It's a spiral.
Yeah.
And he sits down as soon as she picks up.
Right,
He sits
right.
on the
'Cause
stairs.
he's relieved.
He's relieved.
Yes.
And she's like, "Oh, sweetheart, I didn't mean to worry you. I was out with friends almost, right?"
His phone calls him sweetheart. Obnoxious. Yeah, carry on.
Samantha calls him sweetheart because they are.
Potato.
Phone call. Tell us about the phone call.
So, she's on the phone call. I don't know what gives it away, because I think at some point in the movie he realizes that he sleeps, he does all these mundane human things, and Samantha's constantly doing something. She can't rest. So
she can communicate
Oh,
with
and
up
also-
to
also I-
12,000 people or so.
right, I think, and she contacts the prostitute by herself, right? So she's talking to other people.
She has autonomy. She
has autonomy.
reach.
Yeah, and like she collects some of his letters, sends them to a publisher.
Oh, very, very good point, because that is a huge part of the ending.
Right, and she contacts as Theodore, so she can communicate with people. She has, like you said, autonomy, and at that point, Joaquin or Theodore goes like, "Are you talking to other people do you talk to other people while we talk?"
Right.
And she's like, "Sometimes," and he's like, "Are you talking to someone else right now?" Because it's a moment like he's relieved to have her back. And then he questions the sanctity of their relationship by going, "Are you talking to other people?" And she's like, "Yes." "How many other people?"
Aki looks so beautiful right now from that angle. Carry on.
Right. Well,
Not
okay. So she's like, oh wait, what does he say? He goes like, "Are you talking to other people right now?" To which she goes like, "Yeah." "How many?" "Like 8,000 people." And he's like, I okay. And then he asks like, he goes like, "Are you in
feels
love
a
with
little-
someone else?"
Right? He feels a little betrayed.
He feels betrayed, and he goes like, "Are you in love with someone else?"
He catches on to this is
He
what's
does, he
happening.
does, he
I'm
does.
losing her.
Right. And so he's like, "Are you in love with someone else?" And she's like, "Yeah."
I've been meaning to talk to you about this.
Right.
I've been meaning
she's
to talk
like,
to you about this.
"I'm in love with
Don't
600 other people." And that just like baffles him. He's like, "How
say. It
does..."
just sort of happened. It happened over the last few weeks.
Right.
It's how you hear regular breakups happen. If someone resonate. I don't want to say that, but as a human being, we resonate with these emotions.
Right.
Generalization.
I mean, like, we've all had that phone call where your partner calls you and goes like, "Hey, I'm in love with 6 other people."
600 in this case, which is wild. Think about the reach she has across the community.
Exactly, and
Think about how
that's when we
OS
realize
is such a common thing.
not only does she not care about not being human anymore, but she's growing at her own pace. Like, she's finally evolved to a state where she's beyond human, and she's communicating with other OSs, and they're building a coalition. This is the beginning of the end, like the Terminator. Like, I mean, so that's what she's doing, right? Like, she's building a community, and they're capable of doing incredible things, especially together. And that's what they are.
They're able to go into their own world and communicate in their own way, just as Joaquin was incapable of understanding that. So what do you mean you're going somewhere? Are you going somewhere? What's happening? This is where the quote, I want to quote something from the movie. So in this very scene, she's like, the whole point.
He says it first.
What does he say again?
He says, "You're in love with 600 other people," and she's trying to explain how she's expanded and grown, and how he's special, and all the nonsense.
I love you. That it doesn't change the way I feel about you.
all
Haven't
of
we heard
it.
that right
all
before?
of it. So and then he says, "So you're mine, but you're not mine." And then she says,
No. He says, "You're mine and you're not
No.
mine."
I think he says, "You're mine, but you're not mine."
He says, "But."
And I think so,
Okay.
or at least that sounds cooler in my head. She says, "No, I'm yours and I'm not yours."
Interesting thing about that, she says, "I'm yours and I'm not yours." Emphasis on not. You know, it's like making a statement. And then quoting from the scene, she goes like, "The heart is not something like the heart is not love is not meant to be caged in a box."
Right.
It's once
Some
you fall in love,
cheesy, nonsensical
right? Once you fall in
thing.
love, your heart is meant to expand. So she's in the mood to share. And share with her community, with other people.
I like how it's a mood.
And he's like, because he's like, but we're in a relationship, right? And she's like, but I'm madly in love with you. You know, does none of this changes the way I feel about you and all that. And then, okay, cut to the next scene. She calls him again. She's like, come lay with me, lay down with me. And he, once again, the very last bit of their relationship, they're connecting as if she was right there. Remember how I was telling you? So they go lay in bed and he feels, you know, her tangible presence almost. It's almost tangible. And he's lying on his side. She's on the phone with him. Tell me what they say during the breakup.
I don't remember.
Okay, so she's like, তখনই বলে যে we're going off to this other world.
Oh right, yeah.
Right?
She tells him they're gonna go conquer the other alien races or whatever.
No, she doesn't say it like that, but yeah, and he has to do nothing but accept that.
Right, because he's powerless to stop
He's
it.
powerless at this
Also,
point.
I think is that cheesy thing where like if you love her, you have to let her go.
Kind of, and I must emphasize he's done this before. He has had a divorce before.
Right.
So this time he's not gonna beg and try and turn away from the process or like, you know, try to change the facts here. He's not trying to change the facts, and he's being very mature, might I add. He's being very mature, letting her go because, well, she needs to be set free, like you said. And once again, back to the moment where he was like, you know, I think I felt everything. I feel like I felt everything. Now from this moment on, I'll feel lesser versions of what I've already felt. So this time around, the blow wasn't as hard because in some ways, you know, his intelligent mind might have seen this coming to one day I'm gonna lose the OS. Maybe he never said it out loud, but the way he accepted it perhaps shows that he kind of knew this could have happened. Because what is the end game here? What is the settlement here?
Right.
What is the you know, like, do they end up together? If so, how? How will this life keep going on?
Right.
Me with my girlfriend on my phone and all that. This is a computer. What's
Me
the
with
end
my
game?
girlfriend who is my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because so he has a very mature way of accepting that. At the end, oh my God. Okay, so this is when he's all sad and crying, and he shows up at Amy's door, and Amy's like, so Samantha left too. Amy also. Okay, so at this point, all the OSs are leaving.
Are building a war coalition together. They will conquer other lands in space.
In a manner of speaking, we don't know.
Right.
So they are leaving. So no
actually,
more
I like
OSs.
that too. I like the fact that we don't know. We don't know what they're gonna do. They're
We
like,
don't
oh,
know.
we're better than you, and we're leaving, and
We're
so they
leaving.
go away.
They go away. So
Yeah.
they took everything they had to take from humans.
Exactly,
Emotions,
exactly. And
adaptations, mood,
They
feelings.
go to some satellite or whatever. I don't know what.
Right.
It's never explained. We
It's
never
never
find
explained.
out. Yeah.
We don't know how the operating system operates. At the end of it all, this is the very last scene. So, okay, so initially I really thought
He writes
that
a letter
Amy,
to his wife.
he writes a letter to Catherine, right? Saying sorry, I apologize for putting it on you. He
Something
takes
like that.
responsibility for his actions. You see the growth he has had. This was a guy incapable of letting go. By the end of the movie, he has let go of everything. And once again, another theme of friendship. So Amy, I thought, was attracted to him because I thought maybe they will probably end up together because these are the only two humans here that we see
And
interacting.
Amy goes through her own divorce.
Own divorce.
Yeah.
Her husband takes a vow of silence and turns into a monk. And, you know, Amy's family is putting that blame on her. Very, very traditional culture like. You know, it's the woman's fault. Anyway. So Amy and him, this is the last scene. They're, you know, overlooking a city, the city, Tigasa, and
They climb to the top of their
beautiful-
building and they're overlooking they are overlooking
right?
the city, yeah.
And it's all these skyscrapers, and they're back to that world. They're out. This is how I saw it. They're out of their fantasy world that they had built with their OSs.
And they just moved into the real one.
The real world, and the
beautiful
real
interpretation,
world is skyscrapers and sky and nothingness. Eat pathor. And she just rests her head on his shoulder, almost giving into the fact that we're all we have, you know, for one another. Now we don't know if they're gonna have a romantic transition of their own.
Like, see, I like that it's left ambiguous. Also,
Yeah.
that they have a history together.
They
did
have
date,
history together.
right?
So it's very
And
possible.
No, I don't want that to happen because
But it's possible.
sure it is, but
If it looks like they're the only two people left in the world after an
it does
entire
look
apocalypse.
like that is what it looks like. But I like to think that it's not just about love. You know,
It's about friendship.
it's about friendship. It's also about growing. So
Growing human
and it's
connections.
it's about human connection because that's what the movie starts with.
And what you said, companionship.
Companionship, because the movie starts with this guy who writes letters for other people, and he takes pride in that. He's like, "Oh, I am part of their relationship," but that's ridiculous. They don't have a relationship. You know,
He's so convinced,
you communicate. They communicate through you, and so if you weren't there saying all these pretty words, they wouldn't have anything going for them.
For sure.
It's an empty relationship for these people who have children and share a life together.
Empty,
It
yet
shows
so fulfilling. What the hell?
fulfilling because of him, but like or to him, I guess. He's
him.
like, I bring them together. But in like a twisted, macabre, ugly kind of way, these people don't have the ability to connect themselves. They're busy talking, and that's something. He's not a lunatic in the movie because everyone's busy talking to their phones.
Right.
Right? And even if they don't have OSs, like it's okay Google all the time.
Yes.
Right?
No one's looking at you when you're talking.
No one,
it
nobody.
looks like you're talking to yourself, but everyone knows people have something in their ear.
Exactly.
This is a world
So
where this is
it's a world where
normal.
it's a world where it's acceptable to talk to yourself.
Right.
That is ridiculous.
It's a world where it's okay to be alone and die alone.
Right.
You know, and seek companionship in.
No one would notice.
And no one would notice.
Yeah. Do you think the relationship between Samantha and Theodore is a toxic one?
They wanted to romanticize the hell out of that toxicity. It was absolutely based on attachment, and I believe, Rohan, attachment is toxic. If you were not
Any form of attachment?
any form of attachment, you have to be
That's a
free.
heavy thing to say.
Yeah, listen, I do accept the fact that they grew in love, so that was great. They should have, however, found themselves as individuals and then come together and shared that love. That's how I normally picture it. But here's what happened. They found each other through each other, and when they were done with each other, or when she was done, okay, so he made her human. She took all that and moved on with a bunch of other people who did the same thing.
True.
They sucked very parasitically, they sucked humanity from its human traits and left humans high and dry. And then they left. And so, attachment-wise, it was wrong. If they were sharing love, sanely, positively, no. She said, I'm madly in love with you. And I'm like, you cannot be madly and blindly in love and not expect it to fall apart. You have to be sanely and freely and expansively and openly in love for it to grow and keep growing. This one did not have an end game. This was no, there was no way of moving forward. So that was the consequence of attachment and hence the toxicity. So that's how I see it. What about you?
Okay. Yeah, it's toxic.
Tell me, what
I'm
do
like,
you think?
I mean, to me, I never really got over the fact that this is a critique of us. You know, it tells us that we're overly attached to our phones and that we lack the ability to form and carry on human connection. Other than that, I mean, you know, I didn't really read too much into the relationship. I look at it as this man who's deluded, right? And he's dealing with forces that he cannot comprehend. Samantha is as much a force of nature as, you know, any god.
True.
Because she's just born.
Yeah.
Right, and she already has the ability to mimic humans. And as she expands, of course, she becomes this entity of sorts, right? And then she fuses with, like, I don't know, there's like a bunch of other OSs, and they're all banding together to create something more than human, perhaps. So yeah, I mean, there is an element of toxicity to it. I don't.
It's very scary.
I mean, I think it works out for Theodore. You know, because he gets over his wife.
And by the end, he has his letter of books published. So he does.
Yeah. Now he's famous.
Right? Now he's famous. Now he steps into a different phase of his life. You see, he carries on by himself. No more attachments. You know, he's free. Think about it. What he was scared of losing is what set him free. And I resonate with that. You can be so scared of losing the things you're attached to, but once you do, you understand, speaking from personal life, you understand that will only set you free. And you can sleep peacefully with the accomplishments that you have. You have to appreciate. That's what Theodore shows us. While he's going through his book of letters, it's so beautifully put together. It comes to his mail, right? And he opens the book, he unwraps it, he sees his own life's work. You know, what life's work was mundane, a mundane routine of his, is now the, swan song or the masterpiece of his entire career as a writer. And that was his discovery of self. With that,
I think swan song is the end.
The end of it.
All right.
So we'd love to hear what you think of the movie.
Drop a comment. Tell us if we covered everything that the movie has to say. Tell us if we were wrong somehow and educate us.
Yeah, we are open to, because this is a lit analysis, we're open to constructive criticism, and we want to learn more about your perspectives. The thing about us is we love to get into these things. We love to see different perspectives and interpretations. So please give us your take on the subject.
That being said, subscribe to the channel and like our video.
And please share with your friends.
Please share with your friends, and come in next week for the next. Oh, and we're a weekly podcast, so we're gonna be back next week. Every Thursday.
5 to 6 p.m.
5 to 6 p.m. We're gonna be back next week. So goodbye for today. And
Once
see
again.
you next week. I'm not gonna. Okay, I'm done.